So you know that they call this panel, "Have you heard the one about?" And I think you all know that that is usually a phrase, "Have you heard the one about?" before you start going into a joke. You have? Well, have you heard the one about the conference in Oman? It was the conference in Oman that was called Advantage Oman Forum. And the idea of this now final session, and I'll bring the panelists up in just a moment, the idea is that we all have a story to tell. The problem is, what is that story? And even if you do have a story to tell, how do you tell it? Because the one thing I think we've all learned in our, one of the advantages of the people in this room is that we are all men and women of a certain professional standard who've all tried in some shape or form to direct both our lives and our companies or our businesses, and probably spectacularly failed in many cases. But we didn't fail because we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't fail, we didn't succeed because we knew what we were doing. We succeeded and failed because we were at times at the whim of the waves. We were carried along, and sometimes, basically, the story that we had told, or the story we wished to tell, did not exist. Just bear with me 1 minute. Let's look at this, and then we'll bring our panel. Let's look at all the people on this chart over here. Well, you've got Invest Oman, you've got the Ministry, you've got Soha, you've got ourselves, CNN. All of us in some shape or form are trying to tell a story. We are endeavoring to get a message out. And the panelists that we're going to talk about now are going to give us their insight. Sorry, just 1 moment. You got my good side. Excellent. The panelists, they're going to give us their insight into it. Why have I come down to amongst you? Well, I like to be amongst the people. Because I always think at these sort of events, there is such a huge gap. Don't look so frightened, sir. I don't have a microphone to attack you with. Not yet, anyway. But I always think at these sort of events, there is an enormous gap between where you're sitting and where we are up there. And I think that's a shame, really, because by the time you've got to this point in the day, well done, ma'am, drinking coffee, please send some up there. After lunch, sorry? At least she's honest to stay awake. Hopefully we'll welcome on board. The reality is, in this part of the day, I want you all to feel more involved. So at some point, as we're discussing this, if you've got a question or you want to make a contribution, just stand up and catch my eye. We'll have a microphone somewhere. Make sure you've got a roving mic. Yep. Oh, go on. Hang on, that's a bit soon. Oh, well done. Round of applause. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Well, that was unexpected. Right. Look at him, moves with such agility. What is my story? I'll tell you it in a minute. First of all, let's bring up our panel. Mohammed Barwani, the chairman of MB Holding Group. Sir, come on up. Dushyant Thakur, the deputy executive director of WAPA. Jonathan McClory, the research associate at Hereford College, Oxford University. So why don't you sit next to me over here? And Mohammed Eissa, of OMRAN Group, who's going to join us. Why do you choose your poison? Choose your poison. That's my chair. Go on, have that one. Have a seat. Okay, I deliberately, Gosh, that's splendid. That is splendid.
That's the defense against your microphone.
That really is. If that comes out, I'm in trouble. Sorry? Are you the journalist?
It can only come out if it draws blood. Otherwise, it doesn't come out.
And the question has to be an easy one. Otherwise, it comes out.
It can only come out if it draws blood. Is that metaphorical blood?
It is.
Excellent. Here's your microphone, sir. There's yours. You take the one to your... Oh, you've got that. You've got one there. Excellent. And I was in the... And the reason I'm going into all of this is I was in the souk the other day filming. And there were several older gentlemen all looking at the various daggers and examining them. And I was trying to learn about them and learn the story behind them. And it's fascinating. Anyway, let's get on with our discussion point today. So tell me your story. In about a minute, tell me the story that you want us to know about you.
I think there are two stories here. Oh, let's get the mic. There are two stories. It's not working. Is it working?
Oh, I beg your pardon. I'm so sorry, sir.
All right. I think there are two stories. There's a story of me, and there's a story of Oman. And I think the two stories are intermingled, and they work together. And the sense is that Oman has a long history of trading around the world. Well, if you go into the ancient history of Oman, we exported Frankenstein.
Frankincense, yes.
Yeah, not Frankenstein, yeah. All right? Around the world. I mean, in the old temples of Mesopotamia and so on, we also exported copper from Oman. So the Bronze Age was actually built by Omani copper. Now, in recent years, Oman was a trading empire with dominions in Africa, with trading in India, China, Africa. Now, I've taken this as an encouragement and as a motivation for me to build business around the world. So we have businesses in Oman where we started, but we now operate in Europe, in the North Sea, in Denmark.
But the significance is that you've taken the history and imported it into what you're doing.
Exactly. So my forefathers were sort of my motivation for building business.
Tell me your story.
Right. I'm still trying to find that out.
Sorry?
I'm still trying to find my story, Richard. But, just when I was coming into this panel discussion, I was just thinking about why this subject, why storytelling is so important. And it hit me that, just before I get to my story, is that the most important thing about any storytelling is that there are two things about it. Is that it has to be emotionally connected, and the fact that it's all about gaining trust. And every one of us has a story. Each and every one of us has a story here, whether we like to share it or not. And it is their combined collective stories that actually makes us realize that what we have in common is way more than what we have in changes. I even have a story with you, Richard. Funny enough that I've actually always watched you behind a screen.
Right.
But 2 years ago, we met at the WTTC in Saudi. Now, I saw you in the panel discussion. I've always wanted to come and say hi. Didn't get a chance. In the evening, you were having dinner just right behind my table. We didn't get a chance to talk. Fast forward, we're sitting here in a panel discussion having this conversation.
So what's the story?
My story.
No, but what's the significance of the story? Because what we're going to talk about, because you're quite right, sir, everybody in this room has a story. And at some point, I might ask one or two of you to tell me your story. But it's the significance of what we do with it, do you not think, that's the relevance?
Absolutely. And the fact that it's been told. Because for me, the saddest thing about any story is the one that is untold. And the most significant thing about the story is the originality of it. The most important thing about any story is for it to be authentic. And I think that is the story that resonates with everybody. Everyone is smart enough to know whether that story is fake or it's about authenticity. And that is why, for me, that is the story of Oman. The story of authenticity, the story of originality. Every single corner around us in the country is a story of design, is a story that tells us a lot. I mean, just look at our traditions, if I may just give you a little bit of a common idea. If we look at our hospitality, that's not something that we value because it's something that is in tradition. It's in our DNA. See a fearsome nation of great-grandfathers who've been sailing around the world, telling stories, coming back. The very halwa that we have as part of our hospitality starts with any negotiation. Why? Because before starting to get into salty negotiations, we go about trying to have anything sweet go ahead in that. Everything to do with frankincense, the fragrances, every single part of that has a story of culture that needs to be told on a better level.
Sir, your story and why, you can lift the microphone up, and the significance of it. Do we have enough microphones?
Thank you. I've got this, Richard. I don't think my story is all that interesting. My story is I spend a lot of time thinking about how countries can understand and better tell their story. And I think in the context of what we've been discussing in all the sessions as well, if I were Omani, which obviously I am not, but if I were Omani, I'd be very, very excited about where Oman is and what it can do in the story that it has to tell. It has great foundations. It has the history, the heritage. Oman was referenced by Pliny the Elder 2,000 years ago, and I don't think there are many GCC countries that have that pre-Islamic history that Oman does consistently throughout. But Oman's story has been underutilized. There's a great deal of potential, but it hasn't been as active as other GCC states recently. For example, this is going to sound very flippant, I don't think Oman has bought a football club in Europe, for example. The other GCC states are really out there and really trying to tell their story, but there's a great differentiating story I think Oman can tell.
But I'm going to challenge you on this. You say that there is a great story to be told, but it has not been developed and put out. Is that what you're saying?
In a sense, yeah. So I think there's the heritage, there's the history side, there's the culture side, and those are the softer elements of the story. I think the missing piece which has come in recently is the Vision 2040, which is fantastic, and so that's the future part. But I'm not sure that the work has been done to tie these together and really put them out there in the same way. Doing the work. But the fact that this is happening, though, for the very first time...
Hang on.
Sure.
Is there a distinction here, and I'll come to you next, sir, and then back to you. Is there a distinction here between having the elements, bringing them together, and then marketing them out? Are they not different silos or different waypoints?
So they're not silos, they're steps in a process.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's both the above-the-line stuff, but the below-the-line as well. It's not just the marketing, it's the doing, it's the finding partners to work with, and I'll leave it there. I know you want to move on.
My story, I represent 130 countries across the world, the investment agencies of 130 countries, which means I've got 130 stories. Some of those are very good stories, and some of them are not so good stories. But in terms of, a couple of, what we were just hearing, and like I would align with you, the Oman story is what I see with my eyes. I can see all of those elements actually here together. And that's what is sort of building layer by layer the Oman story. It's all very positive dimensions that I see here. But then, I can reflect on certain other countries where I've been a part of those stories. And
give us an example.
Let's talk about Japan. So if I am Jetro and if I am Invest Japan, I will say, you're not putting money into these production lines. You're putting money into the thousands of years of perfection and passion that we have. They have a word called as mokazukuri, which means putting your passion, your spirit into making things. And that's what we see. If we have, a samurai sword, like we see a sword here, or if we see their kimono garments, how they are weaving them, or pottery. It's beautiful stories, and that's what then goes into, the Toyota cars and all of those.
I wonder, my mic's not working here. I wonder, though, the way that story, the ingredients of that story, I guess what I'm really worried about, and I'll come to you after I've heard your answer. You can take this microphone here. I seem to have spent most of my time with microphones. I guess what I'm worried about, because obviously being British, you know, there's no shortage of history and have a bit of branding of the royal family, and if you want a bit of the Tower of London and shove Made in England on it. But where does storytelling meet branding in that sense? You first. You. Yes.
Okay. So in terms of storytelling and branding, two dimensions. It can either be something which can come from your history, intrinsically, like we saw in the Japan story, or it is also something which a strong vision for the future and the right elements in place, when they are bound together, a story can also develop from there. You know, so today, if we are seeing here a diversification of the economy, new sectors where Oman wants to invest in, where it wants to drag investments, I think I can see both dimensions coming in. It's coming both from the history of it, you know, the legacy of it, but at the same time, a very strong intent is what we see here on the panel. So, you know, a brand can come from your history. A brand can also be created now. I think it is the vision, the leadership, and their intent of how strongly they want to, you know, focus on it.
So in your case, with your story and brand, how aware are you of the need to keep the two closely aligned and the risk that they start to diverge? That your actions do not accord to what the DNA tells you it should. How aware do you have to be?
Let me start with the first question.
Go on.
Which is the branding. Oman has a brand which is unique.
Describe it.
Well, if you look at Oman is traditional, it's cultural. I don't want to mention any nations in the region GCC, but they all look alike. Tall story buildings, glass, but here we have our souks, we have our forts, we have the mountains, this is the physical, what you see is different. But at the same time, our people are different.
You're being wonderfully diplomatic.
I'm selling Oman to you.
You are, and you're doing a really good job, because what you're saying is, this is Oman, and this is who we are, and this is what we're not.
We are unique. That's what I'm saying. And Oman has something to offer that is very different from other places. If I look at the Middle East, look at Egypt or Morocco, they have something different to offer. So does Oman. We have something different to offer. But if you look at other cities or other places, it's the same as you would see in Singapore or Hong Kong, but this is unique.
So is it difficult to extrapolate that difference that you can then turn into? Because you're right, you've got the forts, you've got the caves, you've got the magnificence, you've got the lower buildings, but putting that together into what it means is the challenge.
The challenge is we have not been very good at marketing Oman. And I think this is where we need to improve ourselves into marketing the country, marketing the culture, and marketing our businessmen too. I mean, if you look at businessmen around the Gulf or around the world, a lot of them have high profiles. Unfortunately, we have very successful businessmen which are not high profiled.
I'm going to come to you in a second. I just want to delve further into that. Is that because of back to the history and the story, is that because here there is a modesty, a humbleness or humility that both works for you and against you at times?
You're very correct in that, and that's true. We have this humbleness, we have this low key or low posture, which works for us but also against us.
Just to build on that, I think the modesty point is a good one, and countries certainly, or cities or regions that come out and just say, let me tell you why we are so brilliant and so great, it's dreadful and it's ineffective. The way to get around the modesty issue, I think, is you go out and you tell your story. what do you have to offer the world? You know, it's telling that story in a way that not just this is us and why we're great, but this is why we can be great together. You know, this is what we can do. These are the advantages that we have that can serve you as well, and we can collaborate. Kind of getting out of the zero-sum mindset. But also on the GCC point, which I think is a good one, in my thinking about Oman is almost the positioning for it should be, because the GCC membership is critical to Oman. It's very important in the region. But Oman does have this sort of GCC and. It is something different and apart, to use your description of, you know, Oman looks a bit different.
I love what you're saying on this question of the zero-sum game. Because whenever I talk about a zero-sum game, particularly in tourism, by the way, I'm shouted down as being a heretic because clearly the rising tide can lift all boats. But I sort of tend to believe that the dollar spent here is a dollar that wasn't spent somewhere else. The contract of shipping here is something that didn't happen somewhere else. So the necessity of being able to tell that story is significant. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I do think, I mean, if it's tourism is a little bit different than when you also incorporate export and investment and diplomatic cooperation, because tourism it's more of a product, and that can be kind of zero-sum. But still, you could have plenty of people who come into UAE or Qatar or Bahrain or Saudi and then say, actually, do you know what? I would quite like to I quite like that. I'd like to see what else is in the region. The same way that an American tourist might go to Europe and they might be attracted initially to France, but then think, well, I'm in the neighborhood, so why don't I go to Barcelona? Why don't I go to Lisbon? So that kind of the regional lifting of the tide, to carry on with that, Richard, I think is positive.
The way, listening to what they've just been saying, how do you interpret that? How do you sort of, again, particularly what our distinguished guest said about this idea of not shouting from the rooftops?
Well, you see, storytelling is never always about noise. It's never about the tallest, the biggest. Sometimes storytelling is just about being present. And for me, Richard, I completely agree with Dr. Mohammed. Oman is different, and we choose to be unique. In a sense, in today's world, narrative is the new currency. The issue is, how can you find something that can be transformed? How do you transform culture? How do you repackage culture to become your diplomacy, to become your economy, to become something that you don't just go forward in prosperity, but you look back at? That currency is important because it is through your narrative. It is because your originality, it's because of your authenticity. Right. You can actually be able to find a way to transform your economies. Now,
I'm going to just pause you with respect, because what you've done is you've asked the question, how you do it. Now tell me how you do it.
It's about being real. It's about being yourself. Oman has always been a story of friendship. It's always been trustworthy. Yes, sometimes it takes time for the marketing, and I agree with Dr. Mohammed, but there has been significant amount of efforts to take it forward. Now, we need to be very mindful about the positioning of the narrative, and the positioning of brand of Oman is about partnership, is about, there's a lot of lessons to be learned, but there's a lot of lessons from Oman to be teaching the world as well. I mean, the stories of friendship and the stories of originality is something that we need to be very important. There are a lot of countries now that are talking about luxury in the sense of commodities and you know, luxury in terms of consumption. There's a different kind of luxury here. There's a luxury of mindfulness, the luxury of being able to be mindful, to take steps, and to take a step forward without taking 2 steps back. So for me, it's about how do you make sure that you use that narrative to gain credibility and turn that credibility into the trust that can attract more and more people to the country.
I'm just going to look, if our audience, if anybody wants to contribute at any point, just raise your hand. I'll look over occasionally to see if, oh, yes, go on, at the back. Are you trying to contribute? Can I borrow your microphone, please? I ought to warn you, no speech making. The first whiff of a speech and I'll stop you.
Thank you.
Who are you?
Oh, do you want me?
Yeah, well, why not? You just said, go on. Your question. Go on.
Nuwanka.
Carry on.
Hi, thank you. My name is Nuwanka Kotagoda, and I wanted to speak towards what Dr. Barwani was saying. I have been trying, so I'm in the business.
Oh, here we go. There's a pitch coming.
Yes, it is 100% a pitch, but no, it's built into what he said about how the GCC, other countries have more accessible business leaders and things like that. I've been trying to get a meeting with you for 2 years and Mr. Mohammed can vouch for the quality of companies I work with.
Right.
I have several things in line with your business.
I'm going to stop you.
And would love a meeting.
I'm going to stop you because there may be very good reasons why he doesn't want to meet you. Will you say hello to him afterwards?
I'll meet with him after this meeting.
Now that's what you call doing a deal. Anybody else while I'm on my feet? Oh, there we go. Sorry, I'm coming back to you in a minute. Please, this is not picture time. Who was that? Who had their hand up? Oh, yes, ma'am. Come on over. Come and join me here.
Thank you very much. My name is Hawa Bibi Khan, and I'm from South Africa. One of the things I didn't see in the storytelling of the pitch is demystifying the economy. What is the specific technical opportunities in Oman to create the point of connect for the investors to be here?
So are you saying that well, you've clearly hit a nerve. Carry on telling me more.
So for example, location. We talk about logistics. So obviously you have ports. You have the different special economic zones and industrial parks. You have an oil and gas sector. What is that value chain? You are a key distributor or trading hub. What is those commodities that the platform is built on to create more traction and to attract more players to enter into the region? And the same thing for tourism. Being clear in what your pitch is about your tourism opportunities.
Why do you think the clarity is not there?
I think one, they said that Mr. Barwani said about humility, being modesty, etc. So the discipline of detail doesn't come through because you're assuming that the other knows you even though you're being modest. Thank you.
Excellent point. Sir, Mr. Barwani, take that point. Advance that point, that this idea of getting the name, getting the value chain out there, getting the individual aspects. Can you see what our guest was saying?
Yeah, there was a number of questions she brought up, and I was not so sure any particular one. Can you rephrase what she said?
No, whose microphone have I got? Good. I think the point is it's the specifics of the story that she is referring to. It is the elements that tell the people, it's back to your humility point, that getting the message out and how it is done in more specific detail.
I think we need basically to start advertising ourselves a little bit more, which we haven't been doing. And talking about South Africa, that could be a great partner for Oman, because it's a large exporter of commodities, large exporter of foodstuff, and Oman could be a gateway for South Africa to the rest of the Gulf.
Because the opportunity is there, isn't it?
It's a great nation, and it has a lot to offer.
Yeah. I heard two words. The first was a strong narrative and history, and the second is humility.
Is what?
Humility.
Yeah.
So, and I look at today's day, and I see this set of 150 people in front of me. The question which came to my mind was, is Oman doing it right?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Is Oman doing this right, today's day, this event? Is it doing it right, is the question which comes to my mind. Is this, the way the story is being presented, is it right? Now, I've spoken at, I'm sure, 100 investment events across the world. I would say this is exactly the right format. It would have been easy to put up 1,000 people or 1,500 people in front of you. But what Oman has done here is they've kept their spend practical. They have been able to headhunt and bring in the right set of people who really want to listen to the Oman story. So I would say it's humble, but it's being done in the right manner. I prefer this sort of a format because investors want a serious depth, and I can see this depth also coming in. If the ministers are all sitting here on panels, they are addressing questions, they're responding to questions. So I can see all those elements also, like the lady's question, they are sort of being responded to.
Isn't this exactly what we think about, and you just said something incredibly important, sir. we think about narrative and storytelling as being the 4-minute video that we saw at the beginning that makes us all feel warm and fuzzy inside, and we love it. But I mean, frankly, that's just a matter of video and a good video editor. But the storytelling is this. The storytelling is you being here, the transparency of saying that you think we could do a better job here, the minister this morning saying this, that, and the other. Is that part of the narrative?
It has to be. So a good narrative is, as you say, it's not just a video that continues to, circulate on your good channel. Those as important as they are, but it needs to be more than that. It needs to be milestones. It needs to be doing. It needs to be action. It needs to be partnerships, and indeed these sort of important convening and conversations. That is absolutely part of how this is done the right way.
I'm going to borrow your microphone again because somebody else. They never warned me about this part of the job. Oh. Now, we need to be careful because here we have someone who is seriously caffeinated. Yes.
Well, it's an honor to interfere this very interesting conversation. And just to go back to her question, and what we are trying to do here is more on, in fact, soft, it's not marketing, it's a soft introduction of what Oman can offer, actually. It's not a direct sales of each, sectors, opportunities, and so on. This is going to happen the second day, where we will be having very one-to-one, very close meetings with the decision makers and the government. And speaking about the storytelling about Oman, actually, we do have plenty of stories. But those stories...
What's your story?
I mean, for my... This is reminding me with the first day I joined this job. I was asking one of my friends, I am really afraid of just stay, front of the media and talk, and said, because you didn't have the story. Once you have the story, you'll be more confident to speak. And after 2 years, now, yes, I do have the story. So the story is about the experience, what you have gone through, how did you actually build different skills, different, relation, network, and so on. How did you achieve, how did you overcome, and so on. So the story is about the experience and the journey. And Oman has a very long history, long experience in different areas. And maybe if there is something we can talk about is, as we said, our positive relationship with the world, which has been constant for the last maybe 100 years. So Oman has a very strong story that we are actually, in terms of investment attraction, leveraging on currently, where we are having plenty of investors coming just to the country because of such positive relationship with the world.
But it's now the goal of to tell the story. You on the right, yes.
Sorry, say that again, Richard?
It's now the goal to tell the story and how you tell that story. Thank you.
Yes, yes, how we tell the story is very important. I also think that in this process you need to work out. You come up with the best story if it's not authentic, if it's not true. That's just going to be seen through straight away. But as I said earlier, it's an exciting time for Oman because those building blocks are there. It's about, but also thinking about who are the right stakeholders, who are the right audiences, and what's going to resonate with them. In my experience, you need a pretty big research undertaking to work that out.
I just want to interrupt you, if I may.
Not at all.
The danger with a big research project is you end up with the person who knows the price of everything and the value of nothing.
There are ways to guard against that, Richard, but you're right. It has to be done well, but the flip side of that is not knowing what you have to work with, not having a clear account of those resources and where they're going to play well. And I think one of the advantages of Oman is this idea of it is neutral, it is where worlds come together, east and west, different seas and oceans meeting. It has different cards to play with different audiences in the right way through that neutrality. But you've got to be really clear about, what you're holding in your hand and when to play the right card with who. And that does take research. Thank you.
Oh, please don't encourage him. Sir.
What would the question
be? No, just follow on from that idea.
So essentially what I can see is that in terms of the good story part is good, But there's never, and I think you mentioned it initially, that there's never a thought of telling a bad story. When do stories start going bad? Either it could be when the vision is too high, that could be one dimension. Another dimension could be when there are changes which take place, which are either unforeseen or it is some changes of leadership. So those are the thoughts, in terms of when the story doesn't seem to be sort of going in the right direction.
No, but I would challenge you that if you have got your story right, and if your story is authentic, then when things go badly or go wrong, you're in a much stronger position to adapt it if you've been true in the first place.
If you're there, if there's, and I've seen this, if in particular countries when there are changes of leadership, a previous leader could have, for example, committed certain incentives to a particular investor. And when there's a change of government, the new person who comes in, this I'm talking about can be stories from different countries across the world. And when there's a change of leadership, the new person who comes in doesn't stand up to those commitments. So it's like, that's where the investor can feel really let down.
I want to pull the strands together here as we come to the end. And I think, to your point earlier, that what we were saying about the significance of knowing where you've come from and where you're going to is crucial.
Absolutely. And, just hearing by Richard from you and for the rest of everyone talking about marketing, I think the difference between marketing and branding is, it's first and foremost, you want someone to understand something, you talk to their mind. You want someone to remember something, you talk to their heart. And brand is, again, like I said, not just about building that trust, but it's about the consistency of doing it. It's a very, very noisy world, and everybody's trying to capture the attention of everybody with the midst of social media. What's very important that we find our voice in the midst of this noise. What's very important is that we're consistently talking the same narrative in the story across all the sector. I mean, today I applaud the ministry and Invest Oman, not just because of them having these forums and Advantage Oman, but it's just come from after unveiling the new brand of Oman, which is very much within the highlighting the very importance of partnerships. Oman has always been across ages known for being very clear. We're a friend of the world, and the world is a friend of us, as long as we don't interfere in anybody's business and they don't interfere in our business. And there's a beautiful quote by His Majesty, the late Sultan Qaboos, that for me signifies and symbolizes the vision of Oman. And he gave the analogy of having two hands. We've always been busy using one hand to self-development and another hand to help other people. And that's how we've seen prosperity, and that's how we've seen growth. It's just about us turning that culture, taking that significance, taking the diplomacy, and turning it into an economical form in a more consistent manner.
I'm going to give you the last word, mainly because you've got a dagger, and I'm not foolish about it. Because I think, sir, in a way, because of your experience, which also means age and the experience you've had in business, you're in a very good position to pull that strand together from history, know where we are today in terms of your businesses, your economy, your opportunities, and push us forward as to what we need to do next.
Well, as an entrepreneur, I've always believed in taking risks. And when you take risks, you don't know 100% of everything. So you need to have enough knowledge where you take a decision, and if that decision goes wrong later on, you'll correct it. I believe every story starts as a bad story, but if you keep on improving that story, and in the end, as I say, the storyteller, what is it? The storyteller wins the world or something like that? Or controls the world?
I want you, I'm going to start with you, we're going to go down the line. I'm going to give a long introduction to this. I want you to sum up the story of Oman. I was going to say in a word, but I'll allow you a sentence. All right? And I'll keep talking long enough for you to have a thought. I mean, you can join in as well if you like. Anybody else like to? Anybody's got an idea? Anybody got an idea? Oman in a word or a sentence. Just shout it out. Ooh, what are you promising? Nice, modest promise. Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Oman in a word or a sentence. I'm sorry? Reliable. Telling the truth, yes? Sir.
Where worlds meet for a better future.
I'm sorry?
Where worlds meet for a better future. More of a tagline than trying to sum it up, but if...
Well,
Thanks.
I'm going to try it out. Oman, where worlds meet for a better future.
I believe Invest Oman is going just the right way. Continue with it and continue holding hands. You know, take the investors forward.
The word or sentence.
It was a sentence.
Right. Sir.
The word is authenticity. And with that, Richard, a lot of people are trying to compete with everybody, but we sometimes forget that the best person we can be is a better version of ourselves. Let's stay true to ourselves and let's amplify that message.
Oman, authentic. Sir, you get the last word.
Rich heritage, bright future.
Oman, rich heritage, bright future. Ladies and gentlemen, our panel.